Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 26th episode this week, where we'll be recapping Super Bowl 56 and discussing some news around the NFL. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at past300levelpod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So, Kevin, what were your thoughts on Super Bowl 56 between the Rams and the Bengals?
I thought it was it had its lulls and its good parts. I think part of the game was a little bit boring, where there wasn't really much going on. I thought it was at the end of the game. I think it really sums up what this game was, where you can't really say. Well, I don't really say that the Rams really won this game. I think it was handed to them. I think if that penalty wasn't thrown at the end of the game, they would have not scored on fourth down. I'm not a big believer in Matt Stafford even after this game. And I know one of the questions we had going into this is what does this do to Matt Stafford's legacy if he wins the Super Bowl? And I think this kind of cements really what I was thinking, where McVay can win with an average quarterback. And I don't think he elevated his team like we were saying he would need to. And it's just ridiculous how for 58 minutes or 57 minutes, the refs let them play, and then all of a sudden at the end you see flags after flags after flags, and especially that ticky-tack holding penalty, which was not a penalty, especially with what they were calling on before, and the fact that they missed a blatant false start by the offense.
Not even just one person, it was the entire offense.
And I come away from that game saying that I really wish that we just saw more, where it went to overtime and we get to see what really happened, at least, or that the Bengals should have won, because it left a sour note in my mouth. The fact that the Rams won this the way that they did, I was not really too happy with that.
I agree to an extent. I believe that the Rams were handed the game, and I think the number one storyline for most people after watching that is just the refs, where the whole season has been an issue in the NFL, and then the playoffs as well, especially wildcard weekend. But there's controversial call after controversial call. And then the first 58 minutes, there wasn't really many flags at all. There was two slight controversial calls. There was the long touchdowns on, I believe, Higgins, where Jalen Ramsey, he grabbed Jalen Ramsey's face mask, where that should have been offensive pass interference. But where the ref was standing, that's something that he was tough to see, at least the sideline ref. So I can understand why that wasn't called. Then there was one of the Bengals touchdowns, or when the Bengals were in the red zone, where the Ram grabbed the guy's jersey, his undershirt, and prevented him, where that could have been call holding. It wasn't, but I think it was a good no call. But other than those two, there wasn't really any issues about the refs. And then the last 2 minutes of the game, it was just flag after flag after flag after flag. And it was just if you're going to not call anything the first 58 minutes, how do you call it in that situation? I don't have as much of a sour taste in my mouth, because even though I think if they don't call that third down holding, I think the Rams lose. But the Bengals had 2 quarters essentially to put the game away. Rams had the ball on the 46, 45 yard line, and then 35 yard line or something like that. And then 3 and out. And the Bengals just weren't able to capitalize on any of these issues. They kept the score at 20-16 for most of the third and fourth quarter, where that's why I don't really have as much of an issue, where even though the refs did a little bit in that play, you can't really blame the refs, because the Bengals shouldn't have been in that situation in the last 2 minutes to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And then also they also had the opportunity at the end of the game to come back, try and tie it, and then they had some really questionable play calling on that second one. And the fact that they didn't take a timeout to really kind of sort themselves out. No one really seemed to really know what was going on. And they didn't even have a real threat for a deep pass there. And the fact that they run with a Perrin instead of Mixon. I just think kind of their play calling at the end was really questionable. And didn't put them in the best position to succeed when they only needed a field goal to tie this up. And I think that's another big part where Zach Taylor kind of showed where we think he has not the greatest skill point is I don't think he's that great of a coach. And I think he kind of showed it a little bit there with some of the play calling that he had there.
And the thing is, with him, at least, he's been like that all season too, which is why, like, I understand. And like, if you just look at one instance here or there, you can think it was just a bad call in that situation. But I still keep going back to the Chiefs game week 17, where I know they won the game, but they had the ball on, I think, the 1 yard line with third and goal on the one. And then they were like penalty. So they were given like 4 or 5 different options, but the play calls every single time were absolutely horrendous, which if it wasn't for bad penalties, they probably should have lost that game to begin with, and they probably don't win their division. So he's been like that all year. And then even McVay, I know he's a good coach. I believe that, but there were 2 instances that I just didn't understand. Both last play before the 2-minute warning in the first half, last play before the 2-minute warning in the second half, last play before the 2-minute warning in the first half, the clock was running down. They snap it right before the 2-minute warning on third down. Matthew Stafford throws the interception. If you let that play go down or to the 2-minute warning, you either A, you can make sure you get the right play call in, and B, if you don't get the third down and it's either completion short of the line or it's run, you force the Bengals to call a timeout. That's one less timeout they have before they can score before the end of the half. In the second half, it was a run play, I believe, right before the 2-minute warning. They gained about 8 yards. But if you just let the play clock go down to the 2-minute warning, then use that run play, you have to get a touchdown to score regardless. But also, if you do get a touchdown, you want to make sure that the other team doesn't have enough time where they can come back and kick a field goal to tie the game or get a touchdown to win it. So that was another instance where if he just let it go down to 2-minute warning and then run the play, you either force the Bengals to use another timeout, or you just run the risk that it's like the Seahawks Super Bowl, where regardless of what happens, these last 4 plays are going to decide it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part they brought up too. I think the clock management by him is really questionable here, and it's not the first time we've seen it either. We saw what was it?
The Buccaneers game.
The Buccaneers game, and then there was the other game, the 49ers game, with the challenges and the timeouts and just really poor usage of the clock there, and something we've kind of seen multiple times, and just really something to really think about there. We kind of thinking about one of the key points of the game we had talked about previously was kind of that offensive line for the Bengals, how weak it is going up against the really good front seven for the Rams. What were your kind of thoughts of what it looked like to you?
The first 2.5 quarters, I was so impressed with the Bengals offensive line, because going into this, I know I said this, if the Bengals offensive line can hold up, they're probably going to win the game, or they have a very good shot. If they play like they did versus Tennessee, they're going to lose the game. First 2.5 quarters, they only allowed 1 sack. I believe Aaron Donald wasn't too active. And that's when they scored pretty much all their points, because Joe Burrow had time to throw. And the running game was actually getting some yards here and there when they actually tried to run. But then the last quarter and a half was the worst offensive line play I've ever seen in my life. It was just, I don't know what happened. It was right around the time where Aaron Donald pushed Joe Burrow out of bounds, but then the Bengals offensive line got pissed at him, even though Burrow was in bounds at the time. And then it just seemed to click where, I don't know if he just wasn't trying hard enough or what happened, but it was just that edge to him kind of kicked something into gear, where the rest of the game, he was just an absolute animal. Joe Burrow's lucky he didn't get killed. If that was Jimmy G, he would have made it to the fourth quarter. But that's the reason why, even though they have some skill players, very good skill players on offense, if you don't have time to throw, you're not going to be very successful, which is similar to what we saw the Patriots the first 5 weeks, 6 weeks of the season.
Yep, I think the big part of that too is, like you said, I don't think they were that bad in the first 2.5 quarters.
Yeah.
But looking at the whole game overall, there's a 42% pressure rate on Joe Burrow in this game, which is you can't do anything as a quarterback at that. We've said this multiple times. 30% or higher is high pressure rate. anything over 35% is you're going to have a really bad game. And the fact that he was able to stand in there and kind of get them to where they were at that point was really good on his part, because getting pressured 42% of the time, and how quickly it was too. It wasn't just getting pressured after maybe 3-4 seconds. It was even after 2 seconds, not having the time to throw it. And that offensive line really started to cave in. The right guard was awful. The right tackle was really bad. And I think they had kind of a revolving door at right guard this year. So I think that was part of the issue too. And they knew where to attack that weakness. And I think the front seven of the Rams really ended up bullying them around afterwards. Cooper Kupp had not as big of a game as he's had in these other playoff games, but he also had a really good game as well too. He was covered a lot more than kind of those previous games, but he was still able to do a lot with it, with some of the double or triple coverages, and they started ending up just throwing it to him afterwards. I think Stafford was afraid to throw to him because he was covered that much, but it looked like after probably the third or fourth quarter, they're like, we have to try and put the ball in the best player and see what he could do. And he was able to capitalize there. And he had some really big touchdown catches for them. I think he was really one of the keys to the game. I don't think Stafford was. Again, kind of comparing the two quarterbacks, Burrow and Stafford. I don't think Burrow had a great game either. I think Burrow's can be more explained away by how bad that offensive line was. You can't really do anything with that much pressure unless you're a extremely mobile quarterback that can run around, and even that isn't really the case. We saw Patrick Mahomes last year. He was getting pressured, I think, even higher than 40%. I think it was like a 50% pressure rate, and he was doing nothing. He was running around like a chicken with his head cut off, and he couldn't do anything. So if he couldn't do anything there, Joe Burrow's not going to be able to do anything there. Matthew Stafford, I think he's just always looking for a way to lose the game, and I know you always have that tweet with like the Stafford special, pick six. And that interception right before the half, it's like, what are you doing? Or was it right before the half or right after the half? Right before the half. And after, so it's like, what are you doing? Like, obviously that wasn't a good decision to make. You had the time to make the decision and you made a poor decision. And then we saw what happened after the Bengals score that touchdown after the half. And then you just knew that something bad was going to happen. And I know the ball was tipped, but it was a bad pass. And that was the reason why it was tipped. It wasn't because of the receivers, because he didn't put it in the right position. And you kind of just see him kind of get like a little tense in those situations. And I think they kind of won in spite of him. And I don't think he's ever going to be a great quarterback. I think he's going to be an average 10 to 15 quarterback, but
he might be good for fantasy, but when you need him most, like a Tony Romo, he's just not there. He just got lucky this playoffs, which I know you can't really say you got lucky, but if you look at the Bucs game, the 49ers game, and this game, 49ers game, Shanahan handed him the game. This game, Zach Taylor and the refs handed him the game.
And
then Bucs game, Todd Bowles handed him the game.
Yeah, exactly. So there's each and every single game you can kind of point to one direction, but then you can also say the Bengals shouldn't have been in this position either if Ryan Tannehill was not completely inept at quarterback.
Or in the wild card game, if the refs weren't horrendous, they probably lose the wild card game too.
I think there's one other situation I want to talk about before we kind of get into the 3 up 3 down is someone kind of screwed you in your squares.
Johnny fucking Hecker. So I was in a Super Bowl square where you get money $100 after every point change or every score. So one of the squares I had was Rams 4, scoring again 4, Bengals 0. So Rams got a touchdown, they were up, and then Bengals got a field goal, and then it was 7-3. Rams got a touchdown. Johnny Hecker drops the snap, and then they don't get the extra point. If they get that extra point, Bengals get a touchdown the very next possession. 14-10, I get $100. Bengals or Rams at the end of the game get the touchdown to go up 23-20. If they had that extra point, it would be 24-20. I'd have another $100. So Johnny Hecker fucking screwed me.
All right. So moving on. 3 up, 3 down. I think we have some pretty similar ones here. So I'll just give you my 3 up, and I'll just kind of quickly discuss it, and then you can go with yours. But I think it'll pretty much be the same. I'd say Donald number 1. I think he was the best player out of all the teams. He really ended. I think he basically kind of helped win the Super Bowl for the Rams here. One little thing I have a disagreement with was the Rams play-by-play color guy for the radio saying that he's the greatest defensive player of all time, making the sack to end the game and win it. I don't think he is. I think he's kind of caught up in the moment, and also he's a team. I think you could definitely say Reggie White and Lawrence Taylor were a better defensive player, and Lawrence Taylor could play everywhere. Aaron Donald is a lineman. So, but he helped win the game for them. Next one, Sam Hubbard for Cincinnati. I think he was really all over the place. He really impressed me how good he was in the run game, and just getting pressure on the quarterback. And then Von Miller was my last one. I think he really helped set up the pressure that Donald was getting. So I think if he wasn't there, you could focus more of your attention on Donald. But even so, he had an insane amount of pressures, and I can't remember exactly what it was that I heard the actual PFF number. But I feel like he really comes to play in these big moments. So if he's really feeling it, he could really do well. So I think he had a really good game here.
Yep. No, mine are very similar. My number 1 was Aaron Donald, where he just pretty much, like you said, won the game. Just ever since that, when he pushed Joe Burrow out of bounds, something just clicked in him, and he was just bull rushing right through offensive linemen on numerous occasions. And for someone to push around that easily offensive linemen, it was just impressive. I agree. I don't think he's the best defensive player of all time. I think Lawrence Taylor is by far. For me, it's Lawrence Taylor number 1. Like, it's not even close. Lawrence Taylor number 1. Then Reggie White is a few little below him at number 2. I think you could have him in the conversation for 3, top 5. Top 5, I think he's probably in there, but he could be in the conversation for top 3 if he plays another 3-4 years at this level. Maybe top 2. Maybe he's in the conversation with Reggie White. I just don't think you could ever put anyone in the conversation of Lawrence Taylor, at least right now. Number 2, Cooper Kupp. He had a really good game. Wasn't as big of stats as the previous playoff games, but that's also because he wasn't wide open, unaccounted for the entire game, like several times. He was double covered, sometimes triple covered, especially when Odell went out. And I think that's one thing that we just didn't even bring up, which I'll bring up in a second, was Odell. But he still had, I think, 9 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He made an impact. And then Hubbard, like you said, he was everywhere. He was the Bengals' probably best player throughout the game. Just bring on Odell, since we didn't really talk about him. He actually had a really big impact, especially the playoffs, but the last 2 games. And it's unfortunate because it's the same ACL that he tore previously. So I don't know if he'll come back from that ever, or if he does, if he'll be the same. But he was making plays. He probably had a bigger impact on the game than Cooper Kupp did until he went out. Partially because Cooper was drawing more defense, but it showed that at least up until that point, he wasn't washed up and he was still able to make plays. And it's just unfortunate for him that he suffered that same injury.
Yep, it is something that we did reach out with Doc Flynn on Twitter. You could follow her at Doc Flynn NFL. And she did mention, because we did ask the question, is it harder coming back from an ACL if it's the previously torn ACL? And she did confirm, in fact, it is a harder recovery, a harder surgery in general than if it was let's say his other knee. So it's just something to keep an eye on. He is getting up there in age, not like he's ancient or anything like that, but the older you get, the harder it is to recover. So just hopefully for his sake that he'll be able to make a full recovery from this. Going into the downs, I think we're pretty similar here. Actually, probably not actually. Offensive line, the Bengals, we mentioned this. The pressure rate they gave up was too much, and you can't win a game giving that much up. They really have to address this going into next season, or else they're going to kill Joe Burrow. He can't get that much pressure every single game, or he's gonna get hurt. Number 2, Jalen Ramsey. I think he had a really bad game for how good he's supposed to be, and all of his talk and all of this sort of thing. I don't think he's that great of a cornerback. And I know Stephon Gilmore had kind of slighted him before when he said he's a zone corner and he's not a real man to man. And you can kind of see that there. I think he was trying to cheat a little bit to try and make some plays rather than defend the ball, and you get caught a lot of the times doing that. And he was kind of exposed, I think, a little bit in this game. I don't think he's that top tier number 1 or number 2 cornerback in the NFL. I think he's a good corner, but I don't think he's that best corner in the NFL. And then Matt Stafford. I don't think they won because of him. I think they won in spite of him. And nothing that he did made me think that he's this special quarterback. And a fourth one, honorable mention, would be the punters, both of them in general. I think the Cincinnati punter sucked until his last punt, which he had like a 60-yard punt. He had one that was like 20 yards. And then Heckler, for everything he's made out to be, he didn't have a really good game punting, and he had that drop. So,
no, I think that's fair. And for Heckler, who's one of, if not the best top 3 punters in the NFL, he was atrocious. So that was really surprising. He pulled a Jake Bailey all game. Yeah. My number 1 down was Bengals offensive line. Like you said, they were just horrendous, and they're the reason, along with my number 2, that they lost the game. They just were not able to do anything. And then last quarter and a half, they were just getting pushed around, like pretty much with no effort, or at least it looked like that. My number 2 down was Zach Taylor. I just thought he had an awful game, especially in key situations. I mentioned that earlier. And then number 3, Eli Apple. He got torched a little bit, or pretty regularly. I know he had a tough assignment with Cooper Kupp, but I think going into the game, he was talking trash, saying Cooper Kupp pretty much had nothing on him or stuff like that. And then he just got eaten alive. So that was my bottom 3.
All right. Moving on, the LA parade that happened today. Just a quick discussion of this. What do you make of how kind of poor the showing was of this?
So I don't know what was worse, the parade route, which I don't know if you guys saw it. If not, it's on. You can look it up easily on Twitter. I know we retweeted it, but it's a very small portion of USC's campus. So it's pretty much you take a left, or you get onto the main road, you go down about 3 blocks, and then you go into the LA Coliseum. So in Boston, we're used to going down all the main roads, the duck boats and everything. It was probably a quarter of a mile into the Coliseum, and they're saying there's 100,000 people in attendance, but if you actually look at the pictures, I'd say maybe 25, maybe 30,000, which is atrocious. I know it's not really a big football town because the Rams are still new to it, but if you think of the difference in population, the city of LA has a population of over 4.5 million people. LA County has a population of 10 million people. And to only have about 25 to 100,000 fans there is pathetic. The Patriots, when they won their 6th Super Bowl, had 1.5 million. And that's for an area that has nowhere even close to just the LA County population, or even the city of LA to begin with. So I thought it was just pathetic. And it's sad that the city of LA has a football team if that's the fan support that they're going to get, not only for the Rams, but also for the Chargers too, which Chargers fan support is even worse, but that's for multiple other reasons as well.
Yeah, I think even though they're probably the best team in LA, they're not even LA's favorite team. I think the majority of people in LA probably like the Raiders the most. Because of the Oakland ties. And then the 49ers, I think more LA people like more than the Rams. I think there are more 49ers fans in LA than there are Rams fans. So hopefully for their sake, they'll be able to grow this fan base over with McVay being the coach. But they haven't really grown that much with it. So
and that's their second Super Bowl too in the last 4 years. It's not like this they sprouted out of nowhere and people just didn't have time to get on the bandwagon. They've been good for the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years.
All right. Moving on to a lightning round, 9 questions. We'll try and go pretty quick through these. Who should have been Super Bowl MVP if you had
Aaron Donald?
Agreed. I don't think Cooper Kupp. I think he was good, but I don't think he was deserving.
Yeah, just want to say, just like Alex Barr said on Twitter, Alex Barr.
I don't know, probably one of those
Yeah.
two.
What he said, I completely agree with. Aaron Donald got screwed just like Ryan Allen did for the Super Bowl MVP in 2018.
It's a good point. Number two, of those two teams, the Rams and the Bengals, who would you pick if you had to pick one to make it back next year?
I'd say the Rams just because the NFC has gotten worse with Brady leaving the Bucks and then the Packers being in cap hell. I think the Bengals, they're young, so you could think that as they get more experience, they could get better, but there's just so much parity in the AFC.
Yep, I agree. I think number one, there is that stat out there how hard it is to get back to the Super Bowl after losing it, or even going there in general. And the fact that the Rams have already gone, this is their second time, and the fact that he was able to do it with Jared Goff, and I know they have some cap trouble, but eventually they'll figure it out until they'll probably push it till whenever he wants to leave, and then they'll have to face the consequences then. So I think the Rams. I don't think either of them make it back, but if I had to pick one, I would say the Rams.
I agree.
Next question. Will the Bengals make it back to the Super Bowl in the next 3 years?
No.
I would say no as well. I think the biggest thing you said, the amount of parity in the AFC and how many good teams there are, I think just makes it really difficult for them.
I think that along with Zach Taylor being the coach, those two things.
Mm-hmm. And there's a good chance that Burrow gets hurt again and turns into the Andrew Luck. Which would be very unfortunate because I really like Burrow a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I'm pretty high on him. So I hope they get him some offensive line protection. I don't want to see him turning into the next Andrew Luck.
Yep. Same.
Looking back, did the Bengals make the correct pick with Chase over Penei Sewell?
I think so. Even though you saw if they had Penei Sewell during that game, the protection would have been a lot better. But I don't think they get to this point without Chase. I don't think they win their division without Chase. So even though like maybe for the long haul, maybe in a year or two, I might change my mind if Joe Burrow gets a torn ACL, God forbid, next year or something like that, because his offensive line can't hold up. But right now they don't make it this far without Jamar Chase. So I think you can't say that, at least at this point, that they made the wrong pick.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Chase is a really big playmaker. It's not really tough to find in the draft now for wide receivers, but the how big of a playmaker is, he's in that top tier of top 5 receivers that they don't grow on trees. And I feel like offensive linemen, you can kind of pick and pluck. You got Owenu in the 6th round. A lot of the offensive line Patriots aren't top picks. So I think it's a lot easier to get an offensive lineman later on in the draft than it is one of those standout elite wide receivers. Going forward next year for 1 year only, would you rather have Mac or Stafford?
I'd rather have Mac. I still don't trust Stafford in big situations. Mac, even though he hasn't won the game, we saw time and time again, whenever they were down, he put them in a position where they can either win or they have a chance to win at the end. Matthew Stafford, I know he's had 3 comebacks or game-winning drives this playoffs, but a lot of it was just more given to him, whereas Mac actually made some plays and he actually has some stones.
Yep, I agree too. I think Mac has the mental capacity that Stafford doesn't have. I think his mind really puts him ahead. He doesn't have as good of an arm as Stafford. Stafford throws a really good ball. He's got really a lot of arm strength, but I don't think he has the intangibles that Mac has. And I think Mac is just a winner. We saw it every game, like you mentioned. All of those times he put them in the position where they didn't end up winning, but a lot of it was taken out of his hands. And then even the Bills game, he was the only person to come up to play besides Bourne. And there was someone else I can't remember. But I would say Mac. Okay. Next question. What are your AFC power rankings for next year? Your top 5?
That's a tough one when you pose that. My number 1, I have to go with the Chiefs. Yep. Number 2, the Bills. Number 3, the New England Patriots.
Oh, put them a little higher than me.
Number 4, the Chargers. This is more talent alone. I think their coach is an idiot, but then again, we saw Taylor bring the Bengals all the way to the Super Bowl. So, and then number 5, the Bengals.
All right. I've got Chiefs, Bills, then Titans, Bengals, Patriots. I was going back and forth between the Bengals and the Patriots because I feel like the Bengals are going to take a step back next year.
I do too.
But they have so much more talent the Patriots have, especially on offense, that I'm just giving it to them there. The Chargers I wouldn't put in just because the coach is a moron. I think he's more of a moron than even Zach Taylor is.
I agree. I think the Chargers though have so much talent
Mm-hmm.
where if Bill Belichick was that coach, they're probably at worst 14-3 this year,
Mm-hmm.
if not better.
Yeah, that's a good point. Who are you predicting for next year's Super Bowl?
I'll have you answer that one first. I'm still trying to decide my NFC pick.
All right. NFC, I have the 49ers with Thomas Edward Patrick Brady as their quarterback. And then the AFC, I will have, and I had it, and I forgot what it was already. I'm going to just go with the Titans because I don't remember what my other pick was. It was between them and someone else. Oh, it was between them and the Raiders. I'm going to go with the Raiders, actually. I'm changing my mind. I'm going to go with the Raiders against the 49ers. I think Josh is going to do a really good job there. He's surrounded himself with a ton of talent on the coaching staffs, from the front office to the defensive coordinator to the assistants that they have there, to the quarterbacks coach, to the everyone there. I think he's made a really good job with the hiring process. So I'm going to go with the Raiders against the Titans in the AFC Championship game.
I think that's a good pick with the Raiders. I don't have them, but I could see them with Josh. I think that they have talent on their team. I just don't know if Derek Carr is that quarterback to lead them there.
I think he's a loser.
As we saw with Stafford won it, and I think Carr is in that area with Stafford. I'm gonna go with the Chiefs again. I just think until they're really fully beaten. I know that they lost this year. To the Bengals, but they still have some talent. I think this is probably the last year before they start to fall off just because of the cap situation. I'm going to go with the Chiefs, and I am going with, in the NFC, the Packers.
Really?
Yeah. I just think the NFC, especially with all the cap situations, that's why I don't feel comfortable with that pick, because they're in cap hell there. I think 40 million over the cap.
And Aaron Rodgers is a loser.
Yeah, he is. But I don't see the Rams going back to the Super Bowl again. I think Kyler Murray's an even bigger loser. Seahawks suck. If I'm just assuming Brady's not coming back, so 49ers with Trey Lance aren't going there. NFC South with Brady out, no one in the NFC South is going there. NFC East sucks except for the Cowboys, but Cowboys with Mike McCarthy always choking big games. So it's pretty much Packers by default.
That's true. Unless he goes to the Broncos. So then they're not winning with love. Next question. Should a sky judge be implemented after kind of those different ref issues? And I know they've kind of have one unofficially, where some games they mention that they have it, something that they don't. Do you think it should be like a full-time sort of situation?
I think it should be. And I also think that you should be able to challenge penalties as well. I know we saw, at least when the challenging pass interferences, we didn't see many overturned because usually they still went with the discretion of the ref. Mm-hmm. But that still should be something where the Rams should have been able to challenge Higgins' touchdown where that was offensive pass interference. Mm-hmm. The Bengals should have been able to challenge the holding call. That probably wouldn't have been overturned just with how we saw the challenges on penalties previously. But I still think that should be something where in key situations, you can't have the refs deciding the outcome.
Mm-hmm. And I think if you had a sky judge there, you could have said, let's huddle up and talk about it. And then when they talk about it, they can claim that it was not like overturned by the sky judge, but it was a collaboration. We're like, it's actually not a flag. And I think just relying on one person to make a decision, I think we have all this technology. I think we might as well use it. And then who are your top 12 favorite Patriots of all time? In order you mentioned. I'm not going to give mine in order.
I'm going to give mine
just to give a little. Oh, you want to go first?
Oh, you can go first.
All right, I'll give mine. It's no in particular order, except the first two. I've got Brady, Bledsoe.
Yeah, Brady number 1 over your number 2.
Yeah, even though if it was last year, maybe I would have said Bledsoe. No, but no, Brady's giving me too much joy over the last 20 years. I can't.
That's fair.
Slight him over how I felt about him. So I've got Brady, Bledsoe, Troy Brown, Deion Branch, David Patton.
David Patton.
David Patton was one of my favorite receivers we had.
Yeah, me too.
In that first period of the dynasty.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. Julian Edelman, Teddy Bruschi, Mike Vrabel, Willie McGinnis, Vince Wilfork, Bethel Johnson, and Rodney Harrison.
I forgot Bethel. I love Bethel. Favorite kick returner of all time. So those are some good options. Mine in order: number 1, Brady; number 2, Richard Seymour, Hall of Fame; number 3 should be in the Hall of Fame soon, Vince Wilfork; number 4, Gronk; number 5, Julian Edelman; number 6, David Andrews; number 7, Ty Law; number 8, Matthew Slater; number 9, Harrison; number 10, James White; number 11, Logan Mankins; then number 12, Bruschi.
It's a pretty solid list. There's another question I was going to add to the podcast, and I can't remember, but I feel like we could probably add it on. Actually, no, I do remember. After watching the Super Bowl, is there any thoughts to the McVay-Shanahan system versus all the other systems out there? We've seen so many people from this coaching tree have success, where you have Kyle Shanahan in the playoffs, you have McVay, you have Taylor, you have Brandon Staley, even though he's a moron. You have Kevin O'Connell's going to be a head coach.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something with that system that other teams should try and flock towards and try and gather versus the Reid, the Belichick, all of the other ones, where the Belichick's offensive system isn't even really his system? It's that what's it called? It's the old Patriots playbook from back even in the 80s, 90s that's been carried over for the whole time. So
Ray Perkins?
Yeah, I think Perkins Earhart or something.
Yeah. I think part of it is just, if you look at the teams that they're with, they're just loaded with talent, where part of it I think is more good luck. I think McVay is a good coach, though he does have his moments where like we mentioned earlier today, that it's just bad situational coaching. But some of the coaches you mentioned, even though they've had success in big games, they crap themselves. So Staley, Shanahan,
not
Taylor.
saying that they're the most, I'm just saying the system in general, not their situational play calling, their system in general, to put the type of plays that they have, like their playbook, basically. Is there something to their style of play
there
that
might
is
be
better?
I don't know if I have an answer, just because they have all had success, so I think you could argue yes, but also part of it I think is just they have good talent too, so it's tough to really know which is more the reason why.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think there's something to it, because the amount of success we've seen with it, there has to be something with it. Could be that simplicity, or maybe it's complex, but I know we've always seen people have success when they go into there, and you see Odell Beckham have success when not being in the same playbook, and jumping right in. Whereas if you see a wide receiver go to the Patriot system, they're not gonna learn it in that coming in week 5, 6, 7, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to it. I think it's something we may want to try and just look into a little bit more, maybe this off season or next year, and either have like a blog or something kind of depicting that. But I think it's a pretty good question to kind of just keep top of mind. Is there something to that play style, that playbook, that may be simpler, easier, or maybe more conducive to winning than some of the older systems that are out there?
Yep. And then just on another note, just one point that I noticed from the Super Bowl that I took away with is watching the game, the style of game, the two teams in it. The Patriots aren't that far off. I think this year they could have competed with both the Bengals. Granted, I don't know if the defense could have held up. If you infuse more speed and talent on the defense, I think they're not that far away. It's not like a few years ago where the Chiefs were a juggernaut and you might be a couple of steps below them. You are right there with some of the best teams in the NFL. And another year with Mac under the belt, and another year with some of the players full off season to learn the playbook. Granted, depends on who the offensive play caller is on offense, but Jonnu Smith might be able to take that next step. Nelson Aguilar, you get faster on defense. You get better, some additional cornerbacks, faster linebackers. They could easily be back in the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think looking at this game, I think they could have competed with both of these teams.
Yeah.
Maybe it would have been a little bit more difficult with their defense, but I don't think it did. And we'll be talking about this later on in the coming weeks. But I don't think their defense has that much farther to go. I think there's
Yeah.
additions and subtractions that need to happen, but I don't think it's this complete overhaul. I think they may have some of the pieces already there. They need to just tweak around and be faster and more explosive, and be able to compete with the Bills. So that way you can compete with everyone else. And I think that's what they're going to have to try and gear their defense up so that way they can handle basically the Chiefs and the Bills, and then everyone else would be easier. So I don't think after you get those two top teams, I don't think there's anyone out there that's really far ahead of the Patriots.
Yep,
I
I
think
agree.
the Bills most of all of them are probably most just because they're very explosive. They have an extremely athletic quarterback that can run and pass, and they always had difficulty with that. So having more speed on defense is the biggest thing. But and having just more talent. So, but I don't think the offense is in a bad position. I think they were ranked like a top in the 6th or 10 in
Yeah.
scoring. So I don't think they have that much farther to go. I think one more additional year, assuming they have someone on offense that can help Mac progress.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that next week or the week afterwards about kind of this coaching carousel, what's going on. It should be kind of a good look, but that'll be a discussion for next week. So thank you everyone for joining us. You can again follow us on Instagram, Twitter at Pat's 300 level pod. Subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And remember, you could also follow us on YouTube as well. See the video up on there. Thank you very much, and talk to you guys next week.